Welcome to Journey to Queendom. This is your season of reign, a season of shedding survival, releasing fear, and stepping into the woman who God called you to be. You weren't created just to endure life, you were created to reign in it. Let's begin. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Journey to Queendom. I'm so happy that you are here another week to sit and chat with me. I so enjoy your company. So let's get into it. You know, this space is for you to breathe and to soften and to kind of come back to yourself. And today we are going to go somewhere a little bit deeper. Today I'm sharing my cancer story. I've been hinting and speaking about it throughout the episode. So I thought it was time for me to talk about the elephant in the room and the interruption that it caused in my life and in my journey, and how it became a part of my journey, this journey to queendom. There was a version of me that believed that if I just, did everything right, if I worked hard enough, if I stayed disciplined enough, if I stayed strong enough, that I could control the outcome of my life, or I could make it as close to what I felt safe it it becoming, if that makes sense. Or let me say it this way. I felt like, if I did all the things, then I could make it as close to what I wanted it to be. I felt safe in it becoming. And that's what I thought I was doing. I really did. That's what I believed was happening because I was moving, I was building, I was doing. Um, and throughout that time, if I'm honest, my body several times has sent me messages to stop, to slow down, to pause, to investigate what's happening inside of your body. But this time, that message became extremely clear. I remember beginning this journey of trying to investigate what was happening in my body because I had been told on many occasions, other appointments, checking on other things, that I had a lot of lymph nodes throughout my body. And there was one time in particular that I went to get a mammogram. And when the tech was doing the exam and doing the things that they needed to do, they were like, wow, you have quite a few lymph nodes. I think you should investigate that. And so I did. And, several tests, several x rays later, I was told that one of the lymph nodes looked a little off putting. And we started to investigate that lymph node specifically. And I started seeing an oncologist, which I don't think I really sat with what was happening. The idea that, okay, you need to see an oncologist. And I just thought, okay, this is what they say I need to do. Let's get it done so we can get an answer, and I kind of just stormed ahead, in essence, this is what needs to be done. And so I'm going to do it. And the oncologist, at face value, really could not find anything that pointed to cancer. But he was very determined, which I appreciated, to keep investigating because it didn't make sense to him why I had all of these lymph nodes all over my body, yet my blood work and numbers it was totally normal. There was nothing abnormal in those tests. And then he decided to send me through various PET scans, which was kind of difficult because insurance doesn't really like to pay for things unless something is wrong, which is interesting. Thankfully, my insurance covered the PET scan. My oncologist made a case for it and they accepted it. And when we took the PET scan, he saw that there were some areas in particular that were lighting up. And when areas light up in a particular way on a PET scan, that usually means that there may be some cancer in that area. So then the oncologist decided to take a biopsy of the area that was lighting up. And from that biopsy, he was able to determine that there was cancer in my blood. And so, as you can imagine, everything stopped inside of my brain, inside of my body. And it was at that time I was diagnosed with follicular lymphoma. And this type of cancer is in the lymphatic system. That's where it starts, in the lymphatic system. And that, of course, is the very system designed to protect me from getting sick and illnesses. And so that kind of started the pause in my brain and in my body and in my breath, because it was like, whoa, what on earth is follicular lymphoma and what is it doing inside of my body? You know, as I started to research, and the doctor did a great job of explaining to me what this type of cancer is. And I've done that in former episodes, and you can certainly do your research, but it's usually a disease that shows up in older people, usually between 70 and 80 years old. And the treatment is really simple. They don't do anything because these individuals are already 70 and 80 years old, and you could live with this disease without it impacting you for, 10 to 15 years. So why aggressively treat something? The older you are, your body is not really going to respond to that treatment in the same way as if you were younger. So they basically just let it go. And it doesn't really affect your quality of life. As it starts to become a problem, chances are you're at the end of your life anyway. That's the way they think about it. But as you can imagine, it's kind of different for me because I'm not 70 or 80. And in 15 or 20 years, you know, the plan is not to die, right? So something has to be done now um, to stop the disease from spreading and growing in my body. So, you know, this was a moment. This was a moment in my life where I remember thinking, what? Why now? Why me? Why this? What? What? Like, what sense does this make? And I'm chuckling now, of course, because I'm thinking and remembering. But at the time, I just remember after that conversation with my doctor, just going into the car and crying and crying and crying and crying because I just didn't understand. I didn't know what it meant. I was afraid of that word, cancer. I was afraid, absolutely afraid, and rightly so, of that word. And now I am being forced to pay attention to what is happening in my body. I personally believe that God designed our bodies to work with intention. The Bible says that I am fearfully and wonderfully made, and that I am made in the image of God. So I believe that there's a way that the body is meant to function, a rhythm, a balance, internal harmony, if you will, and harmony with God, in the way that he designed my body to work. And so when that harmony is disrupted, the body does not stay silent. It screams, it signals, it alarms. For an example, when I get a bruise, my body responds. Or when I get a cut, my body responds in pain. And later, it scabs over and heals itself. So when something is off, my body communicates. And so often, when my body sends me signals, I am so into what I am doing, moves I'm making, projects I'm working on, or whatever, I don't listen. I don't listen because I don't have time. I don't prioritize that. There are so many other things that I prioritized at the time over the signals that my body was giving me. And I justified just powering through, just moving forward, just doing the thing that I need to do to get through. At the time of this diagnosis, I had to pay attention. I had to open my eyes. I had to slow down and say, something is out of alignment. Something needs my attention. It became an invitation to slow down, to pay attention, to investigate what my body was trying to tell me. This diagnosis was real and it wasn't going away, and it wasn't something that didn't matter. I started to pay attention to my body and think about what needed to be done moving forward. We developed a plan, and that plan was okay, we know what this is. Let's see what happens. Right now, we don't need to treat because it's not impeding your quality of life. There's nothing we see as an emergency. So I'll send you to a specialist, get a second opinion, and we will keep our eye out. So I went to see the specialist and he agreed and he said, you will eventually have to undergo treatment, but that time is not now. So we will wait and see. Like I said, this is a very slow progressing disease, and it doesn't really impede my quality of life. And to be honest with you, sometimes I forget that I even have it, which didn't help moving forward in terms of processing this diagnosis the way that I approached it and that I internalized it. I remember when I got the diagnosis and, my husband and I talked about it, and I was like, well, I kind of probably need to tell my parents, and my family. I just remember thinking, I don't want them to get all worked up. It's not really that big of a deal. It's okay. I'm okay. Everything is okay. And I got them all on the line and I told them, and I saw their faces over FaceTime, and I knew they were freaking out. And I was saying to them, don't do that. It's fine. Everything is fine. We're good over here. Of course, hindsight is 2020. And now I am sitting in a different position now. Treatment is necessary now. Just saying the words, I have cancer, is and was very difficult for me because I never thought that I would say them out loud, because it sounds scary, heavy, like something that doesn't belong to me or is not a part of my story, but here we are. I'm stuck between the two thoughts that it's not that scary, at least not in the way that I've seen it in other people. Because when you hear cancer, you think about hair loss, extreme sickness, visible suffering. And my experience doesn't really look like that. So I find myself just like downplaying it and softening it and getting in the way of people's, making a big deal out of it. And so I'm like, I have cancer, but it's not that bad, but I'm okay, but it could be worse. And if I'm honest, there's a part of me that feels bad even saying the word cancer and my name in the same sentence, because it's like I don't have a right to feel a certain way about it because it doesn't manifest in my body the way that it does in other people. So, I'm constantly saying to myself, you're good. You don't need to complain. You don't even need to talk about it, honestly. Nobody even needs to know. I don't look like I have cancer. I don't move through the world like I have cancer. And so nobody would ever know. But then there's this other part of me that's like, just because something is invisible, it doesn't mean it isn't real. And by me minimizing it, it certainly doesn't make it easier or make it less lonely in my experience of it. The adjustment I now find myself making is like, I just have to let the word be what it is, without shrinking it or making it palatable for other people, without apologizing that my cancer looks different than other people's cancer, or that my cancer isn't as bad as other people's, without buffering it. The truth is, I have cancer and I'm allowed to feel however I'm going to feel about that. Now, I am in treatment, and that recommended treatment is chemotherapy. And it's a version of chemotherapy that is milder than the chemotherapy that we most commonly know, which is a very, very, very harsh version with hair loss and being violently ill and not being able to do life after that treatment. You have to just be out for the count. My chemo doesn't look like that. First day of my treatment, I was terrified because I didn't really know what to expect. Everything I read online scared me half to death. But, I knew that this chemo was a little bit different. It was not as aggressive. But still, I knew that I was allowing poison, literal poison, to enter my body. And I understood that that was dangerous. That was a dangerous choice. And I understood that there was a purpose and that it is meant to heal this cancer in me. But I knew that it had the ability to do other stuff in me too. I don't know exactly what else can happen because of this treatment. And so that just terrified me. It terrified my husband. It terrified my family. But he was there with me, and my family was praying for me. And he held my hand as we walked in and checked in and walked through the doors. And, they take your vitals first, and you have to wait for about 45 minutes until those. And they also take your blood work, and you wait for the blood work to come back to make sure that your body can even handle the treatment. Your levels have to be a certain percentage, and you have to have a certain amount of blood cell count in order to have the treatment, because this treatment severely lowers your immune system. If you get sick and get a fever, it could be really, really bad because your body will not have the ability to fight it off. So you have to be at a certain level before you even begin. So after the blood work comes back and everything is good to continue, they give you pre-medication, which basically is allergy medicine, steroids, and a cocktail of sorts to prepare your body to ingest the poison that it's about to ingest. It's foreign. And your body, of course, isn't designed to ingest that amount of toxic poison. And my body did what it was supposed to do. Within a few minutes, even though they had given me an allergy medicine, my body started to freak out. The first thing I noticed is that my scalp just was itching, like fire ants were all over my scalp. And I could not stop it from itching. And I'm like, hey, my scalp is really itching. But I didn't know. Of course, I didn't connect the dots to, the medicine. And then I started getting like these whelps on my neck and my face. And my husband was like, no, that wasn't there first. Let's get the nurse. Everything had to stop because I was having an allergic reaction to the medication, which kudos to my body for saying, don't put that poison in me. So we paused when I took a stronger version of allergy medicine. My body calmed down. The patches disappeared. My scalp stopped itching. And then, after a period of time, we started again. And it was quiet. 6 hours later, the first day of treatment was done. And then day two is another round, same process. And then you go home and you wait for your body to catch up with what's just happened. And I waited. And 2 days later, that's when it hit me. And it was a fatigue like I had never felt in my life, never experienced in my life. First of all, I have never been down for the count for a long period of time. I've been sick, I've had the flu and, been weary and tired, but, I have still been able to keep it moving, to do what I need to do. But this time it was like I could not fight against it. There was nothing to be done but to lay there. I could not do anything. The nausea came, which they warned me about, and it was constant. And I didn't want to eat, but I knew I needed to. I was just so tired, so exhausted. And then it became this forcing yourself to eat, forcing yourself to get up, because I'm like, surely I can still sit up. Surely I can still return an email. Surely I can still do something, because that's what I was used to. And I just couldn't, I just had to lay there. I just had to sleep. And my husband would just be looking at me like, I don't know what to do, because this wasn't me. My son would come in and out of the room checking on me, because I'm in the bed. Day three, day four, almost an entire week. And it was just, I don't know, it was so sad to me and frustrating because I had stuff to do. I had stuff I wanted to do, but I was heavy and could not, I couldn't do anything. And this was different for me. And this was the monthly cycle. Every month, 2 days, the first of the month, I repeat this treatment cycle. And so you try to fit it into your life, around work, around everything I normally do. But the truth is, I can't make it fit perfectly to where it doesn't interrupt things or get in the way of deadlines or responsibilities. It just is. And it was frustrating because I wanted to be able to go away, do this treatment, pop back on the scene, and nobody know every month for 6 months. But, you know, that's not the way it works. And I was in a fight, am in a fight with my mind and my body and the way things were, because now things are different. They are just different. I realized the difficulty in accepting that this is different. I am different. And so I have to wonder, am I processing this? Or am I just trying to get through it so that I can return, so that I can go back to full productivity, yada, yada. But what if that is not the goal? What if that's not what I'm supposed to be doing? Like this interruption was for a reason. Not that I have cancer to fix my life. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that I need to know that at this point in time, my routine has been interrupted and it is okay. It is okay. Like my life now is split into two: before the cancer diagnosis and after. And I have to pay attention to the way in which my life is moving at a different rhythm, a different balance, a different kind of internal harmony. And that's important for me to acknowledge. And that's important for me to accept. And what does that mean for me moving forward? It means that in order for me to be in alignment, I need to absolutely adjust. Because the old systems that were in place before no longer work where I am right now. And it's important to realize and identify those systems that don't work and to actively incorporate new systems that now fit to where I am and where I'm headed. And that is such a difficult thing for a high functioning woman because it's like the way that I get stuff done is to bear down, hustle through, get it done. And that is not the way that I need to move forward. It can't be the way that I move forward. My life isn't that anymore. And this diagnosis is saying it can't be that way anymore. My lymphatic system will not support that lifestyle anymore. How much more clear can my body be communicating to me right now? That the alignment is shifting. And I'm making a commitment to a season of reign, to not just identify as this queen, but to fully reign in my queenness, if you will. And in order for that reign to be beautiful and beneficial, I have to adjust right now. The other part of my brain wants to implement a system. But I do hear God saying, it's just allowing. That's it. Surrender. You know, you don't have to override any other systems. You just need to allow and surrender to the momentum that is moving in a different way. What systems in your life need to shift because they are no longer working? Have you had a major interruption to get your attention, or have you had quiet knocks at the door to get you to pay attention? Because I assure you that those quiet knocks will turn into bams on the door, that will turn into kicking down the door, that will turn into you being unable to ignore the signs and signals and opportunities to make that shift. And why does it take that? Because our society has conditioned us to ignore ourselves, to ignore our bodies, to sacrifice the small indications that we get. It's time to unlearn that and to pay attention and to get into proper alignment. I sure hope that this episode has been beneficial to you. If so, please share it with someone that you love, share it with a friend, so that in hopes they may be able to receive some of what you received. I cannot wait for the next time that we meet. And until then, reign, Queen. Thank you so much for being here on Journey to Queendom. This is your season. Every step you take toward healing, truth, and courage is a step into who you were meant to be. Stand tall, walk boldly. Your reign starts now.
This podcast was brought to you by Artists at Play, nurturing the artist within.